Okay, I'm hoping my mute button is working. All right, let's go to the next question. Number 9. Angel WVM says, I heard 1 Corinthians 4:6 used to say not to go outside of Scripture. Learning history to help interpret biblical context, for example. Your thoughts? Well, obviously, I'm one who goes in that sense. If learning history to understand biblical context, if that's going outside of Scripture, then I do it all the time. Like I just held this up. And this is going to seem borderline to some people, right? I'm literally reading a first century astrological text, like astrology, right? Creepy stuff that's off limits for Christians for sure, to practice those things. I'm only learning it because it literally relates to the meaning of the word authentes in 1 Timothy chapter 2, because it's used in this text. And when you have to look at all these examples of its use in order to understand it, Ptolemy also uses the same word. So I'm looking through him. So these things are definitely, I'm doing it all the time. I do exactly what you're talking about all the time. So you guys know what my answer is going to be. Here's the question. Can I justify my answer? You can be the judge of that. 1 Corinthians 4:6. I have applied all these things to myself and Apollos for your benefit, brothers, that you may learn by us not to go beyond what is written, and that none of you may be puffed up in favor of one against another. Not go beyond what is written. So the pastor, whoever it is that has said this to you, they're taking the phrase "don't go beyond what's written" and they're applying it to learning history outside the text of Scripture. The first question you want to ask yourself is this: does that seem like what Paul was talking about in the passage? Because obviously, not going beyond what is written, you could apply it very broadly. I could say this literally means anything you read, even if it's Christian, is not allowed. Commentaries are not allowed. Why? Because you're going beyond what's written. What about a Bible with footnotes or study notes? I could say that's not allowed. Why? Because that goes beyond what's written. Does it technically go beyond what's written? Yes, it does. If you take that phrase out of its context, not go beyond what's written, and you just apply it wildly and very strictly, it does mean that. What does it mean in the text? Let's back up and look at the context so that we won't go beyond what is written, which is actually what interpreting that verse to mean that is doing. So this is how one should regard us, Paul says in 1 Corinthians 4:1, as servants of Christ and stewards of the mysteries of God. Moreover, it is required of stewards that they be found faithful. But with me, it's a very small thing that I should be judged by you or by any human court, if in fact, I do not even judge myself. For I'm not aware of anything against myself, but I am not thereby acquitted. This is actually a really cool passage to study and learn each phrase, what he's talking about here. It's really interesting. We move forward. It is the Lord who judges me. Therefore, do not pronounce judgment before the Lord comes, who will bring to light the things now hidden in darkness and will disclose the purposes of the heart. Then each one will receive his commendation from God. There's a sense in which he's just trying, that this has gone on here, these first 6 verses, at least of that chapter, is to say, I'm going to do my best to serve the Lord. You should do your best to serve the Lord. None of us really knows how God's going to judge all our works in the end. Let's wait until that time comes. Let's not judge those things that we don't understand. Some would interpret this as, it's a verse that says, don't judge, don't judge. Okay, that's a clumsy phrasing of it. It's specific kinds of judgment the Bible's against. Other kinds it's actually for. So this is talking about trying to judge the motives and the goodness of somebody's works, knowing that God will bring all the things you don't know about that person to light, and he'll test it one day. I've applied all these things to myself and Apollos for your benefit, brothers, that you may learn by us not to go beyond what is written, but that none of you may be puffed up in favor of one against another. Whatever this thing is, this not going beyond what is written, it keeps people from being puffed up in favor of one against another. Do you see there's a cause and effect? If you don't do X, then you won't do Y. Okay, X is don't go beyond what's written, and Y, the thing you're not going to do because you're not going to do X, is you're not going to be puffed up in favor of one against another. What is that? That's based on judging people and ranking people based upon how solid of a Christian you think they are, how impactful and great their ministry is. Like, even so, look, I have a ministry okay, this is going to sound like arrogance to some people. I don't mean it that way at all. Actually, I kind of mean the opposite. I'm blown away that my online ministry is impacting so many people. I'm humbled because I'm like, who am I? And it's an amazing open door that the Lord's given me. But you might look at the numbers on my YouTube channel or the numbers of this ministry's reach through like whatever it is, podcasts and things like that, the website, whatever. And you might think, therefore, wow, Mike has so many rewards. Oh, God's going to really reward Mike. But the Lord's going to then look at not only everything I've done, but all of my heart and all of my motives and what my faithfulness was behind the scene and how much integrity I really had that you could never know. You could never know because it wouldn't be that hard to fake it on a camera. And he's going to examine all of that. And then he'll tell me the things I don't even know about what my ministry was really about. There's the impact, right? But then there's the actual doing of the ministry, what kind of work you did and the things God knew about your heart while you were doing it. The integrity you really had, the things you got wrong. God knows all that and he'll bring it to light. So don't be puffed up in favor of one against another. That's what not going beyond what is written is about. How is that about not learning history? That doesn't seem at all about not learning history. If anything, the phrase not go beyond what's written in Paul, I think he's applying it specifically to, I just wrote you a bunch of stuff, and now I'm asking you not to go beyond what I've written to you. He's not even talking about all of Scripture here, although that's a great principle to apply to all of Scripture to some extent. He's saying, I'm not going beyond what's written here. Let me say it another way. I'm not going to judge more than what I know and then be puffed up against other people. And I'm asking you, don't do that either. Going beyond what I described as, here's the limit of my judgment, I'd ask you limit your judgments there as well. That's what he means. He means the exact context of not going beyond what's written. It is a good biblical principle as a Christian, don't go beyond what's written, as in the Bible presents us this ironclad truth I have as Christians, things that where I learn outside the Bible or extra biblical sort of ideas. I can say those might be true, they might be false, but I won't commit myself fully to them. Okay, that's a phrase I can use. I'm not using it the way Paul did. I could say I'm not going beyond what's written there. But yeah. Bottom line, Paul never intended, when he said don't go beyond what's written, to be telling the Corinthians they couldn't study history, which Paul studied, by the way, or they couldn't read information that was written by a pagan poet, which Paul did, by the way, because he quotes a pagan poet in the book of Acts. He didn't mean that. So if you take the phrase, don't go beyond what's written, and tell people, you can't read history about the Bible in those times, they're going beyond what's written. While using the phrase, don't go beyond what's written, which is hugely ironic. But that's my opinion on that. Be gracious to them about it, but do not let their words have power in your life.